Well, hello and welcome to the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsal, and today we're talking about how to be a profitable law firm in 2026. This is part 5, the final part of a 5-part series I started at the beginning of the year. And I'm going to cover 3 things today that are crucial in achieving the results that you want to achieve this year. The first is going to be talking about KPIs, and there's 2 pieces to KPIs. There's, why is it important for you and why is it important for your staff? Then we're going to go in and talk about how do you stay accountable to yourself? How do you execute? How do you turn what you plan to do into action that actually happens and achieves the results that you want? So that's the path we're going to take on this episode. So 3 distinct sections that we're going to cover. And before I jump into that, I want to mention that we just hosted a workshop in Miami, Florida. This is the 3rd workshop we did this year like this. It's $100K per month law firm growth workshop. If you want to have $100K per month in either revenue or profit, whichever one speaks to you this year, you owe it to yourself to join me for 2 days, because the stuff that we cover in these 2 days is so impactful. If I have to break it down into one thing, it's we overcomplicate business. We make it harder than it needs to be. And if you're operating your law firm in the way that 99% of law firm owners are, then you're on a 20-year journey. And spending 2 days with me in the room can change that from a 20-year journey to a 1-year journey. It's kind of like getting on an express train instead of the local train. Why don't we get off at the station? We'll spend 2 days together and you're going to get onto a different train. And that's what's going to happen in this workshop. So if you want to join me in Montvale, New Jersey, it's the end of July. Dates are up on the website. You can go to profitwithlaw.com/LFG 2026, which stands for Law Firm Growth 2026. And I'd love to see you there. All right, let's jump in and talk KPIs. So many people understand or think they understand that they need KPIs, and then they're scratching their heads saying, how do I set a KPI? How do I know what my KPI should be? What in the world is a KPI? So first of all, KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. You don't have to go to Google and look it up. I just told you. And it's a fancy terminology for basically saying, know your numbers. But there's so many numbers in a business. How do you know which numbers are important? Which are the ones I should be paying attention to? And that is where we're going to start. So we're going to switch and we're going to talk about what is the purpose of a KPI? What is the use case scenario in your business for having a KPI? And when you understand that, we can then approach identifying the KPIs for you. The use case scenario is as simple. For you as the business owner, you need to understand, is my business operating profitably and at the level that I would like it to be? So with our clients, when we do our planning, we talked about this all the way back in part 1 of the series. We begin with the end in mind. We start at the end. What is the amount of money you want to take home at the end of the year from your business? And then we back into, okay, so if that's the money we want to take home, what is the tax that you need to pay on that? Add that back. Now we know that's the profit your business needs to create. What's the profit margin that we'd like to achieve? Now we know how much revenue your business needs, right? So understanding as the business owner, how do I know if I'm on track to that? How do I know if the things I outlined I needed to do to make that happen are happening? That is where KPIs come in. They are ways for us to measure. It's kind of like you're driving on the highway and you have a mile marker. That is your way of identifying where on your journey you're at. And the KPI is the same thing. It tells us how far we've traveled, where we still need to go. It gives us a check-in so that we know what's going on. Plain and simple, for the business owner, this is absolutely crucial, because otherwise you just have a feeling. I feel like we're doing well, or I feel like we're not doing well. And most business owners, that feeling comes from, is my bank account flush with cash, or am I worrying about how I'm going to cover payroll in a few days? And we need to get out of that. If you want to grow your business, if you want to scale your business, if you want to unlock massive profitability, it's not going to come when you're behaving in a feast or famine environment. When you wake up in the morning and check the bank account, and that is how you determine how you're going to operate that day. You will never achieve the success that you want if that's the way you continue to operate. So how do we transition away from it? By identifying what are we looking at to understand if we're achieving the results that we want. So from a business owner perspective, it's your way of taking the temperature, of understanding if we're achieving what we were trying to achieve. Now let's flip it. What gets measured gets results, right? And your employees need absolute clarity of what's expected from them if you want them to show up in the best way possible. And the reality is that as managers of staff, most of us, probably 99% of the people listening, don't do a great job of communicating with our people what their responsibility is, what their job is, what we expect of them, and how we're measuring whether they are getting us the results that we want. So if we haven't communicated that to them, how can we expect them to show up in the best way possible for us? We can't. So if you want to change that, if you want your employees to be highly effective, highly efficient, if you want them to own their responsibility and show up for you in the best way possible, you owe it to yourself to give them a way of measuring that. And that's the other side, the other use of KPIs is for each person in the business, they need to understand what they own in the business process and how to measure it so that and what that expectation of the measurement is so that they can achieve success. At the highest of levels, the easiest one to understand is a salesperson. Somebody who's in sales, we expect this person to do $50,000 in sales in a month. And if they do more than that, then that's above my expectation. And I'm going to create ways for them to be rewarded for going above and beyond that, right? But the unit of measure is, at the most simple level, how many dollars did you bring into the business? And if you are less than 50,000, you're underperforming. You are not meeting my expectations. If you're above 50,000, you're overperforming. You're exceeding my expectations, and I'm going to reward you for that. So now the salesperson understands the mile marker they need to hit on their journey every month. It's not just sales. It's every person in your organization should be able to have a metric that they get measured by. Let's take a receptionist, for example. How do you measure a receptionist's efficacy? Well, it could be how fast are you answering the phone? How many phone calls are being answered? What is our answer rate? It could be what's our client satisfaction score after their first phone call with our office, because you're answering the phone. They need to be able to see your smile through your voice, right? A receptionist needs to do that every time they pick up the phone. But many law firms fail to even tell the receptionist that's their job, and let alone measure that, right? So how do you measure that? Well, there's all kinds of AI tools today to be able to take recordings and give you a rating on how that recording goes. We can use that. Typically it's used for sales, but we could use that for our receptionists to rate their greeting, their politeness and pleasantness on the phone, and highlight where that's not happening so we can play it back to them, critique them, and get them to improve. But ultimately, we can create a scorecard for them that has a KPI they get measured by, and then they get rewarded by it. Now, I'm not going to go into the reward side in today's episode. I think that is going to create too long of a journey for us, and I also covered this in another talk I did. So my team will link to a video on YouTube that we have up where I go through all the different types of bonus opportunities that you have to bonus your team. And I talk about the different types of performance compensation, which includes KPI measuring and bonusing off of that. I do believe, now it's interesting because I met a law firm owner who's very successful. When I met him, his business was doing $50 million in annual revenue. Had a significantly sized team. And if you're listening to this, no, it's not you. It's a different law firm owner. So this law firm was in the personal injury space. So, and this particular law firm owner told me, he said, I don't believe that giving people a bonus for performance actually works. I think that it's actually wasted dollars. And I believe that each person should show up in their best form possible. And if they don't, then you should replace them with somebody else. And that is a belief you can have, and you can own that belief. But I can tell you that we have fractional CFO clients where we are hands-on in their business. And one of the first things that we do is we roll out a new performance comp plan and a dashboard for their sales team. Another thing that we do is we help them to identify KPIs and a bonus plan for every person in the organization. And I don't know who's right, but I do know that every one of our clients that we roll this out to experiences a significant boost in revenue and profit as a result of doing this. So we can argue about who's right, but the proof is in the results, right? And therefore, giving them a unit of measure is the first step, because it allows us to identify this is what's expected of you. But the step right after that is, now I know what above average performance is. We've given it a unit of measure, and we can now reward you for going above and beyond. Now that you understand the importance and the value of KPIs, let's talk about how do you identify them. I wish that I could just come here and say, hey, here is a list of KPIs, and all you need to do is use this to run your business. I could even go through departmentally and give you specific KPIs for every department. However, I would not be doing you justice in doing that, because it's going to be different for everybody, even in a sales environment. And I'll give you an example. So in sales, right, there are some KPIs that most sales organizations would say matter. One is obviously the dollars in the door, right? But two might be the number of clients acquired. Three might be the close rate, meaning how many clients did I get to sign, divided by how many leads or qualified leads did I talk to or did I own, right? And those two, one number divided by the other, gives me a close rate. The thing I like about rates, right? There's a lot of things that are a rate. Well, what does rate mean? It means that we have a numerator and a denominator resulting in a percentage. And that percentage is going to be able to let us know how one person stacks over another, even if they handle a different volume. So I might have salesperson 1 handles 100 leads in a month. Salesperson 2 handles 200 leads in a month. Salesperson 1 closes 50 sales. Salesperson 2 closes 50 sales. On the surface, without knowing that they handled 100 and 200 leads, it looks like they both are equal. One closed 50 sales, another closed 50 sales. But when we look at their close rate, one closed 50 out of 100, which is 50%, and one closed 50 out of 200, which is 25%. When we look at that, we say this salesperson has a close rate of 50%. This salesperson has a close rate of 25%. Who's the better salesperson? All of a sudden, we have a different piece of information that tells a different story. Now, what is actionable off of that story? Well, either one, we need to improve the skill set of the one who's at 25%, or two, we need to get the one who's 50% to be the one handling 200 leads, and the one who's 25% be the one that's handling 100 leads, right? So knowing these numbers actually create insight into your business that can be actionable, that you can use to adjust how you operate. Another client of ours had something very interesting. So they're in the traffic ticket and specifically criminal defense of DUIs, right? So traffic tickets, low ticket, most of them are low ticket sales. So let's say low ticket is, below $1,000, and high ticket is, $2,500 and up. So they have low ticket sales, they have high ticket sales. And when we looked at 4 salespeople on his sales team, what we found is that 2 of the salespeople had a significantly higher close rate on low ticket sales, And 2 of the salespeople had a significantly higher close rate on high ticket sales. By just being intentional and diverting all high ticket sales to these 2 and all low ticket sales to these 2, we effectively increased the close rate across the entire team. Each salesperson was able to close more business doing what they did best, and everybody won. The salespeople get more bonus because they earn more. The um, the overall revenue of the business grew, and it was out of the same number of leads. We didn't need to spend more money on marketing to make that happen. But that would not have been possible without measuring and looking and taking care of and having these KPIs. Now, obviously, you might be sitting there thinking, well, that would require me to even think of analyzing it in this way. And you would be correct, right? But it has to start with measuring and knowing what your KPIs are. And then you can start to figure out, what do I do with this and how do I use it? So how do you identify KPIs in any area of the business? Well, what you need to do is look at what is the function that this person has that we can measure. And I would encourage you to believe when you start this process that every job has something that we can measure, that we can determine how this person is doing. If it's customer service, you might need to do surveys of clients to get a score in order to determine how they're doing. That's why so many companies out there, when they say, hey, when you're done talking, please hold for a survey. And then they ask you on a scale of 1 to 5, what was your experience with, did this person answer all your questions? Did they help you? That survey goes to a scorecard that then gets compiled for that person that you spoke to. And that business now understands how this customer service rep stacks up to everyone else who's doing the same job. And they can use that to exit the lowest players, improve the people who are below average, and try to get everybody to be above average on that team, right? And that's how they elevate the experience for their clients. So when we look at any job, say you're doing personal injury, paralegal support or a case manager, right? What is the thing that drives a case forward? What is the thing that gets you closer to the finish line? It's sending a demand, right? Now, when we look at the process, maybe before that, it's making sure that a client is treating. So right there, we can say, okay, how often are you checking in with a client to make sure that they're treating, to make sure that they're going to their appointments, their doctor's appointments? And we track that. Or we could say, how many demands did you send? And we set a metric, right? I expect that you're going to send 6 demands this month. And if you exceed that, I'll give you a bonus of $25 for every demand that you send above 6 up until 10. And then if you send more than 10, I'll give you $50 for every demand until 15. And if you send more than that, I'll give you $100 for every demand from 15 and up. Now, I just made that up on the fly. Don't use that in your business. Your metrics need to make sense, right? The dollars need to make sense within the scope of what they do. But guess what? Somebody who in the past might have been sending 5 demands a month, given an opportunity to earn a bonus, and given the metric of knowing that the minimum expectation is 6, is going to start doing at least 6. And when they start to taste what that bonus feels like and looks like, they're going to start to push that envelope. Now, they're not going to go to 20 demands in a month on month 1, most likely, but they're going to start to figure out how to do their work more efficiently. They're going to start to figure out how to find the cases that are ready for a demand, how to move cases along faster, or target the cases for a month so that they could get a bunch of demands sent out in a month. Guess what? I don't care how they're doing it. They're figuring out how to be more efficient. I don't have to solve that. And at the end of the day, the law firm is now going to make more money because more demands sent equals more settlements equals more dollars in, right? So every single stage of the way, we can identify something that this person is responsible for that is going to move the needle forward in our long-term or annual plan for the next 12 months. And that's the first step in identifying like what are the most important KPIs. Now, for every job that is not inbound monetary specific. So if you're not a salesperson or an attorney that's turning work around, it becomes harder to measure based off of dollars. For every position like that, I recommend a bonus structure that's tied to multiple KPIs so that they have an incentive to hit all the KPIs. Now, it doesn't work for every single position. You might have a position that you can only come up with one KPI, and if that's the case, then so be it, right? But I would challenge you to try to identify 3 to 4 KPIs for every role, because that becomes more powerful. Let's go back to our personal injury example, right? Let's say somebody who's a case manager for a personal injury, there's a number of things they need to do. Number one, when a case first starts, they need to make sure that there's insurance, make sure that there's documentation for the injury, basically get the file all set up. And let's say that normally should take 2 weeks. Well, maybe one of the KPIs is that 90% of new cases got past this first phase in 2 weeks or less. Right? Now, from there, they then go into treating, and they need to make sure that their client is treating, and they need to get far enough along in the treatment process to be able to start to send demands, right? So there's another opportunity for a KPI that, is how frequently they're checking, or how many, or what percentage of their caseload is maintaining their treating. There's different ways that you can measure that, but we assign a KPI there. Then we have demand sent. So there we have 3 KPIs for one role. And maybe we can come up with a fourth one. If if I'm talking to a client, we might be able to collaborate and come up with one. That's what I want you to do, is I want you to think through, like, what's the journey that this person is responsible for? What are the things this person is responsible for? And then we're going to take that, turn into something measurable, identify what my minimum expectation is based on what we know about the industry, right? Like, your business, so what somebody who's halfway decent should be doing. Set that as your minimum expectation, and then set a goal for them for the month or the quarter. So I generally like to work with quarters here. Set a goal for the quarter that they're going to maintain this level of KPI, or that they're going to hit something superior. And then based on that, they're going to unlock or achieve that KPI for the quarter, which then unlocks a bonus. There's something tied to it that they get a reward. It doesn't have to be a bonus. Rewards can come in different ways, but they get the acknowledgement that they have done an above average job. Okay, so I know I didn't talk specifically or specifics in all the KPIs. There's so much to unpack there, but I think you'll understand how powerful it can be to identify what these are and to implement them in your business. And you're not going to figure this all out overnight. So just take one role at a time, figure out the most impactful role in your business, and start there. Probably your sales team. And then from there, probably your attorneys. And then from there, probably your paralegals. And then you work your way down to the lowest cost people, who we could just add more people if they're less efficient. So we're unlocking a lower value by making them more efficient. But ultimately, I want to have my entire team all operating within this realm of KPIs being measured and them being held accountable to it. Okay. The other thing I said we're going to talk about on this podcast is, how do I execute on what I identified? So if I figured out that I want to bring home $1 million personally this year, and because of that, I identified that I need to be doing 3.5 million in revenue in the firm, and because of that, I identified that I need to hire 3 positions and invest in marketing in a new marketing endeavor. So those are basically what I need to execute on for the year. Once I know what those things are, the way that we work with our clients is, let's identify what's the first thing. What is the first door we need to swing open that's going to allow us to execute on the others? Generally, we'll be able to look at this and understand, So if it's marketing versus hiring, you got to look at your capacity. Do I have excess capacity now and I need to fill that? And filling that is going to make it easier for me to go out to market and hire somebody. Then I'm going to execute on my marketing thing first. And by the way, it doesn't have to be marketing or hiring. It could be like rolling out a performance comp plan for my sales team. It could be putting my sales team through a training to uplevel their skill set. It could be that I could execute on more than one of these at a time, but that depends on who is owning the responsibility of that and do they have the bandwidth. So if you have a sales manager, then yeah, you can hand that project to them and that becomes their project of the quarter and you don't have to, you could be hands off. But if you don't have a sales manager, you're overseeing two salespeople. You're also overseeing the attorney. You're also overseeing the marketing or the intake or there's all these other things you're overseeing. That becomes more and more difficult for you to oversee new initiatives in all those areas. And that's where we need to kind of sequence these projects and make sure that you can actually get them done and get them to the finish line. One thing to understand when you're going through this is that we tend to overestimate what we can do in a day and we underestimate what we could do in a year. And this is something that we really need to hone in and understand, because what we need to do is try to do very little that we target to do in one day, but over time we're going to get to completion. So I'm going to use hiring an attorney as an example. Okay. So if on my list I need to hire an attorney, I'm going to look at that project and I'm going to say, okay, what are the phases for hiring an attorney? So let's just think about it. The first thing I need to do is I need to put up a job posting and get people interested in the job, right? So the first part of the phase is the recruitment phase. And in that phase, there's many steps. So I need to do a market analysis to figure out how much I'm going to pay that person. I need to write the job posting. I need to figure out what my minimum requirements are and what my nice to haves are. How do I want to position the firm to the outside world when somebody's looking and evaluating working here, and so on and so forth, right? So I'm going to get clear about what the role is, get clear about what the pay is, and I'm going to write a posting for it. And I'm going to disseminate that to the job boards. Then I'm going to tell people about it. So I'm going to go out on social and I'm going to tell people about it. I'm going to contact people on my cell phone, or I'm going to send text messages. I'm going to basically go to my world, all of my different contact points, to let people know I'm hiring. This is the role I'm hiring for. Do you know somebody who might be good for this role, right? So that is the recruitment phase. And there's other pieces to that. Maybe I'm hiring a recruiter. Maybe I'm hiring a bunch of recruiters. Maybe I am doing some sort of scouring on LinkedIn to find somebody, right? So all of that needs to be identified in that phase. Then I've got applicants coming in, and I need to vet those applicants and hopefully find one person I want to hire, right? So there's the interview process or the filtration process of identifying who it is that I'm going to hire. And then the last phase is, once I've identified a candidate, is to give them an offer and onboard them and go through that onboarding period. So what we've done is we've taken this one project and we've broken it into three main phases. We're now going to take each of the three phases and we're going to break it down into all the different pieces that have to happen in that phase. And then we're going to take that and we're going to break it down. So I want this to happen over a 90-day period. So I'm going to look at a 90-day period, which is 13 weeks, and I'm going to break down all of these different tasks into a 13-week timeline so that I can execute on this over 90 days. And when we do that, what's going to be funny or interesting to you is that very little is demanded from you on a single day. On one day, you might just be looking through job boards and surveys to understand how much somebody needs to get paid for you to be able to find them and recruit them, right? And that might take you an hour. Another day, you might have one interview. That might take you 30 minutes or an hour, right? Or you have two interviews. It takes you an hour or an hour and a half. And when we start looking at it, it's 30 minutes a day, 60 minutes a day, an hour and a half some days. That gets us to the finish line at the end of the quarter. Now, internally with our clients, we give them a planner. We use a planner produced by Michael Hyatt. It's called the Full Focus Planner. My team will put a link in the show notes if you want to go and purchase one. For our coaching clients, we send a new planner every 90 days. We provide that to them. We're big fans of it, but basically it helps you to map out this journey over the course of a week, over the course of 90 days. And all that you haven't heard yet is this. Every week, at the end of the week, at the beginning of the week, either on Friday or on Sunday night or on Monday morning, you have a meeting with yourself. And you go through and say, okay, did I achieve what I set out to achieve in the past week? And if yes, great. Now I'm just going to lay out my next week. If I didn't, I need to figure out how to reshuffle this so that I can get back on track. Because the only thing that's going to prevent you from not being able to achieve this project is if you fall too far behind. 1 week behind is always something we can catch up with, right? Like we can distribute 2 weeks worth of work into 1 week and actually not feel overwhelmed and get it done. But when it becomes 3 or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, now all of a sudden you're trying to do the project as your full-time job. And we know with all the hats you're wearing that that's never going to happen. So what we need to do is we need to meet with ourselves once a week. We need to identify what we didn't get done, and we need to look at what we need to do in the following week and figure out how to manage the work that we're behind and the work that's coming up. And if you fell behind in a week, maybe you take the next 2 weeks, add the week that you missed, and then split the 3 weeks over a 2-week period. So it's not trying to stuff 2 weeks into one, but instead you're doing a week and a half and a week and a half of work. That together is 3 weeks. And now at the end of the next 2 weeks, you're back on track. But the key here is, and this is the key, is that you're mapping it out, you're having the weekly meeting, and you're taking the action. So many people think about what they need to do. They have all these great ideas. They might even write it down. They might even create an action plan or a to-do list. But they never get to the to-do list. When you come into work in the morning, it's so easy to get snared into the email vortex. It's so easy to get pulled into the meetings of other people who need you. Calendar yourself that first 60 minutes of the day and knock out the project that's going to move your business forward. We do it in such micro bite-sized pieces that it's so doable. It's not going to derail you from doing everything else that you need to do. And when you're done at the end of the quarter, you'll look back and say, wow, I actually executed on this. I did it. It worked. And now I could go on and do the next. That is the key to our client success. That is what our clients are doing in actuality when they're taking all of the stuff that we talked about over the last 5-part series, and they're turning it into actionable work that they're sticking to and they're holding themselves accountable to. And that is what gets results. So hopefully you enjoyed this 5-part series. Hopefully you're well on the way to being a profitable law firm in 2026, and you're achieving the results that you want. If you still don't see the path there, you still don't know how you can get there, or when you look at it, you're like, wow, it feels so distant, so far into the future, then I invite you to check out the workshop that we're holding in the end of July. We host a 2-day workshop. It's called the 100K Law Firm Growth Workshop, 100K per month law firm growth workshop. And the 100K per month is really just to get your attention, right? But the reality is that what we do in the room is we help you to understand how to see your business through a new lens. We help you to see the path to the future is not in decades, but instead in months. We overcomplicate business so badly. Every business owner is guilty of this. We always think we need to do more. It cannot be this easy. So we do. And by overcomplicating it, we slow ourselves down. The reality is it's easy. And we can make it easy, right? And I'm not saying that the journey is easy, but business is simple. We find clients, we serve them, we collect money. We do that efficiently, and we're making profit. And if we want to do more of it, we need to figure out how to find more clients, how to serve more clients, and how to keep more money, right? That is it. That's the whole thing. And everything else that we focus on is just noise. It's just excess. It's things that are not necessary for us to win. And you can find proof in the marketplace of other people that are succeeding without the thing that you're focusing on or that you're doing. So why don't you join us for this 2-day workshop? Let's go through your business and let's map your journey so that you can turn this around for yourself in the next 12 months. You can check it out at profitwithlaw.com/LFG 2026, profitwithlaw.com/LFG Law Firm Growth 2026. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in Montvale, New Jersey. Folks, we're here every single week with a brand new episode. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, then I encourage you to subscribe in whatever channel it is that you're listening or watching so that you get notified when a new episode drops, which we do consistently every single Thursday, and maybe some bonuses, extras here and there. So we're looking forward to having you as a subscriber, and we will see you next week. Take care. Bye for now.